Hello, good morning and welcome to ET Now's The Newspaper Show with me, Varun Hiremat. Before we go any further this morning, let me remind you that the newspapers are completely safe. All personnel at the presses are using the required sanitation and PPE. So any rumors you hear revolving around the newspaper not being safe and a potential contaminator are not true. So go to wantmypaper.com and there you can explore all the various delivery options for the various publications that you would like delivered to your residence. But with that, let's surge forward. We have a lot lined up this morning. Let's get a feel for the top 10 stories, beginning with one that's on the front page of the Economic Times this morning, that Carlyle leads the race for Piramal Pharma stake. So we all know that Piramal is looking to divest their pharma business in order to supply capital to the NBFC business, and it seems that Carlyle is one player that's in the race to purchase that company. Supreme Court can't demand 4 lakh crore AGR dues from PSUs. That's what the Supreme Court has to say. So there's going to be we know there was a hearing yesterday which was adjourned and pushed forward to June 18th, so we'll see what happens with that. Telcos may offer assets as security to the Supreme Court. So in exchange for payments, there may be some assets that are pledged like a promoter would pledge his equity. Similar thing, please do have a read. SBI moves NCLT to recover dues from Anil Ambani. So this again is on the front page of the Economic Times this morning. Obviously, lenders are trying to recover, and whatever means that need to be done to recover the money are being explored. So Anil Ambani, they're looking at various measures to do that. SBI moves to cut stake in SBI Life by 2.1%. So this was a key block deal or block that was coming up for sale that we heard about yesterday. It's not that SBI needs this money, please don't confuse it. It's because they need to comply with the shareholding norms that were set. They still hold an additional 2.1%, which needs to be sold. Moving on, Motherson eyes $18 billion revenues in FY21. So that's self-explanatory. This could be a second beginning, says Nisa Godrej, talking about obviously Godrej Consumer's recent change of management, which will see her playing a much more critical role. RBI mulls cap on tenure of bank CEOs. So Poonam's going to bring you all the details on this later, but basically now they're going to come out with some timelines regarding around how long a promoter of a bank can be the promoter. Just my personal thoughts from what we've seen with the way RBI has responded to Uday Kotak's stake sale matter. I highly doubt they'll be focusing too hard on enforcing this, but nonetheless it's a development. With a law, India plans a lasting ban on cryptos. So finally, some conclusive commentary there. We are not going to be supporting cryptos, and some laws will soon be made to make sure that the use of these is prohibited. And finally, ICMR reiterates no community spread in India. So that's just ICMR coming out and saying that the community spread has been quite limited in India. Now, let's take it forward. We have the top 5 market stories for this morning. First is that the Fed's gloomy outlook spooks global markets. So the Dow had its largest fall since March last night, 1,800 points. SGX Nifty was down nearly 5% last night. Indicates that we could be seeing those 9,500 levels today. Let's see what happens. Promoters' kids can't be shareholders. So this is new. You know, promoters leave a lot of shares in the name of their children or other family members. Now this is not going to be allowed, and this has been said by SEBI. IRDAI for more inclusions in health plans. So that's self-explanatory. Please do have a read. Business on recovery path. MFI repayments pick up. So that's a good thing for banks like Bandhan, Ujjivan, your smaller microfinance focused banks. Apparently payments have begun, so that's a good sign. And then pace of rating cuts picks up since March. That's coming in from ICRA. So we're seeing a lot more ratings downgrades, and that obviously Moody's, S&P, we've been talking about it. So the outlook is quite grim right now. Okay, top 5 corporate stories. ONGC reworking capex plan may go for a 15% cut. That's self-explanatory. Capital is tight right now. Capex has to be curtailed everywhere. Postman delivers a unicorn with $150 million. So again, do have a read on that story. It's quite interesting. Shoppers stopped to lay off staff and close stores. Now, this is very interesting. One of the country's largest and oldest retailers, if they're shutting shop and laying off staff, it really shows you how bad the situation is. Ad spends picking up as malls and airports open up. So at the same time, while other players, some malls and airports do open, whoever does want to do business will be spending on advertising, and hence those revenues seem to be picking up slightly. And finally, as far as headlines are concerned, retail auto sales plunged 89% in May. When we were all locked down, that really doesn't come as much of a surprise. Nonetheless, it is a very bad number. Okay, so I've now got you through the headlines. Let's now address the main stories of the day. And perhaps the largest story of the day is related to the pharma space. So we have Pankaj joining in, who's going to walk us through that. But basically, it seems we have a strong PE player ready to bid for Piramal's medical business. But Pankaj, good morning. Welcome to the show. Which are the companies involved and what does this story really mean?
So Piramal Pharma business is on the block, or rather we can say they are looking to sell 20% stake. This is something which came in November 2019, and since that time, this deal has been going on. And now what Economic Times has reported is that Carlyle may be the front runner. Remember, we at ET Now had done the story that there were 12 different companies or institutional players that had shown interest, from which 3 were taken ahead. Those 3 names were Carlyle, TA Associates, as well as KKR. And now what we are picking up from Economic Times is that Carlyle is probably the front runner. About 4,000 crores is what they are looking at in terms of 20%, which means close to about 20,000 odd crores. That gives them, they have an EBITDA of around 2,000 odd crores on an annual basis, depending on the recent numbers that they have given. So about 10 times EV to EBITDA is what this deal is likely to be at. It's something which has been reported. It's something which Mr. Ajay Piramal has said they would be looking at. And now, probably it's in the final lap. The last I spoke to my sources is that because of the lockdown, there seemed to have been an extension in this deal, or the sort of due diligence that was going on into this deal. So maybe, it's now coming into the final leg in this particular space, where Carlyle could be one of the biggest suitors.
All right, Pankaj, thanks for that. Very exciting, strong PE player and strong local business in pharma. So I'm sure you'll be bringing us more on that later once we hear something final. But thanks again for joining in this morning. Let's move it forward. The State Bank of India has moved the insolvency court under section 97(3) of the IBC code, seeking its intervention to direct the insolvency board to nominate a resolution professional. SBI has to recover more than 1,200 crore from Anil Ambani under the personal guarantee clause of this bankruptcy law. So we'll be following the story closely. Let's see how it winds up. We know he's a cash-strapped promoter. There's a lot of issues he's currently facing. But again, lenders do have to recover their money. So maybe some assets will come up for sale, or there'll be some kind of, clarification made on the kind of loan. Apparently, Anil Ambani says it's not a personal loan, so his personal assets should not be liable. But we'll be bringing you more on that later. Let's take it forward to the telecom space, which has been in focus. All your AGR hearing was postponed yesterday. After a long session, they said now the decision will come next Thursday, so we're all on the edges of our seat waiting to see. But basically, there's going to have to be payments made for AGR and Spectrum. Bharti is in a much better position to make these payments than Vodafone. And if Vodafone is slapped with these 50,000 crore of additional charges, it might be very difficult for them to continue operating. Okay. So that was what was happening with Telecom. Let's now also get you an update of what's happening in FMCG. Production has crossed pre-COVID for food and hygiene goods. Vinny, who's the FMCG analyst at ET Now, is joining us now with all the details. Good morning, Vinny. Take it away.
Consumers have shifted their focus in packaged foods and hygiene products, with all the coronavirus fear as well as the spread of the coronavirus. So consumers have been stocking up, dining in, loading up with sanitizers and soaps. And because of that, large FMCG companies have now ramped up their production, and they have been increasing since the lockdown has started because they are essential items. HUL, ITC, Parle Products, Britannia, Marico, Dabur all have expanded their production now to pre-COVID levels, so that is surely some good news over here. Now, most of these companies said that their operations were restored in the past 2 months, and now the production has finally reached the pre-pandemic level. Before they were, in April when the lockdown happened in March end, that time they were only 10 to 15% of production. Now they are at almost 80 to 90% of the production level, so that is the pre-production level. Now even Varun Berry specifically made a comment that they will be investing in capacity as the demand is higher, and they want to meet this high demand which the consumers are showing towards biscuits and other packaged food. Now there's certain challenges which these consumer companies are facing is the shortage of labor. Yes, they are increasing capacity, but there is still a shortage of labor, and they are running more shifts and introducing automation, but there are certain challenges in terms of labor. Now as they go forward, even Marico is currently clocking around 90% of the FY20 average monthly sales, especially with robust growth in Saffola edible oil and food products. Even if you're going to see, HUL said that they are operating shorter cycles, planning cycles. They're stepping up their agility, reducing complexity, and working longer shifts to build resilience in their supply chain. And they've ramped up their production to 90% of normal levels. So seeing this, we are seeing a high demand, but this demand could maybe not last for a long time, but there will be strong demand for consumer products, so they are ramping up their productions.
All right, thank you for that, Vinny. Quite an encouraging piece of news, and we'll be following it closely. Okay, Utkarsh is going to be talking to us shortly regarding a strong post-lockdown preference for personal mobility choices over public transport has meant brisk two-wheeler sales, and leading manufacturers have ramped up production to 60-70% of normal levels within a month of factories opening up. So, good morning, Utkarsh. Welcome to the show. You track this space very closely and you know everything that's going on. So, what does this really mean for the industry?
So, Varun, in fact, a couple of days back as well, we said that Hero MotoCorp will be producing around 4.5 lakh units in the month of June. That is around 65 to 70% of the total capacity. Now we are coming to know that all the others are following the suit. Now, what's important is, and when I've been speaking to the automakers, when I've been speaking to dealers across the country, it's the rural market which is showing growth. It is the rural market which is showing a lot of promise at this point of time. And when you speak about a shift from public transport to private transport, the people, many believe that the ones who are traveling by a four-wheeler, or those who could have afforded a four-wheeler, were anyhow traveling by a four-wheeler. And the shift from a public transport to a four-wheeler to a car is much expensive, and that will take time. But on the other hand, when you speak about the acquisition cost of a two-wheeler, while you're shifting from a public transport, from a bus, train to a two-wheeler, is much lesser. The loans are much easier, and more importantly, in the rural market, there are a lot of expectations, and the wedding season is going on. In that, you do see a lot of two-wheelers being exchanged or being bought. Then the agriculture market, given the fact that we're talking about a good monsoon, in those cases as well, you're talking about good growth, and that is precisely the reason why major two-wheelers, whether it be Hero, Bajaj, all of them are really pushing on the pedal. TVS has a very strong presence in the southern markets, are pushing the pedal when it comes to ramping up capacity, and most of them at this point of time are eyeing the rural market. There are some which are looking at the semi-urban market, as I said, the shift from public transport to private transport. But I think the biggest green shoot which all the two-wheeler makers are looking at is the revival of the rural market, which they believe will happen much sooner than the urban or the semi-urban markets.
All right, Utkarsh, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on that, and so much happening in the auto sphere, so much to catch up on, so the entire sector will definitely be in focus going forward. But let's switch it up a little bit to a subject we don't really address that much, and that's cryptocurrency. And India is looking to introduce a law to ban cryptocurrencies, as the government sees a legal framework as being more effective than a circular from the RBI in this case. The note will be sent to the cabinet after consultations and subsequently to the parliament. If it is along similar lines as an earlier proposal, experts say the law will deal a blow to investors, exchanges and other entities dealing in virtual currencies such as Bitcoin. So we've never been very receptive of this kind of currency, and now it seems the government is not relying on RBI to send out circulars. There will be a law which means that if you use these currencies, it will be punishable as a felony and you could be condemned to jail. So please do follow that closely as well for all of our crypto enthusiasts. Okay, let's now bring on board Poonam, who's going to tell us about the changes in the tenure norms for banks, MD and CEOs and bank management. It seems that it's going to affect the larger private banks and maybe Kotak Bank before it will impact others. But let's listen in.
The RBI, in its discussion paper on corporate governance on banks in India, has stated that 10 years is adequate for promoters and or large shareholders to continue as MD and CEO or whole-time director of a bank. An MD and CEO who is not a promoter can serve a tenure of 15 years. However, thereafter the MD and CEO shall be eligible for reappointment only at the end of 3 years. From the date of releasing the final norms, the incumbent MD and CEO and whole-time director who have already served the maximum term will have 2 years or time up to the end of current term, whichever is later, to appoint a successor. RBI also mentions that the upper age limit for MD and CEO or a whole-time director is 70 years. The board has the right to go ahead and prescribe a lower age limit. RBI also mentions the application for reappointment of MD and CEO must be made to RBI at least 6 months before the completion of tenure of the incumbent and at least 4 months in case of fresh appointment. To note that these norms are applicable to private banks, small finance banks as well as payment banks. These norms are also coming in the wake of corporate governance issues in banks like ICICI and Yes Bank, and RBI obviously wants to curb those corporate governance issues. Analysts do mention that as of now this is a discussion paper, and if at all these norms are implemented, it could be slightly negative for private banks, especially banks like Kotak Mahindra Bank. So watch out for Kotak Mahindra Bank in today's trade.
All right, Poonam, thank you so much for bringing us that information. It'll just be interesting to see, because the regulators made so many exemptions for these larger private banks as far as stake sale goes. I now wonder how strictly they'll be enforcing something like this. But nonetheless, quite an important development. Okay, now we have a phoner from my colleague Ajay, who's also joining in regarding the fact that children can no longer be shareholders of promoter-held companies, and SEBI's come forward with this directive, but Ajay is going to bring us the latest on it. So good morning, Ajay. Welcome to the show. Take it away. I believe we may have lost the line with Ajay. So basically, I'll just read out what the paper had to say for you. Children of promoters can't be public shareholders, clarifies SEBI. The regulator also said that the promoter or persons related to the promoter seeking reclassification cannot together hold more than 10% of the total voting rights in any company. So basically just ensuring that there's, promoters hold on to the stake and that they don't keep spreading it among their family members. And this is also as a result of voting rights, as key decisions need to be made. And they should be made by the promoter. Okay, so that's done. And now let's move forward to Economic Times, page 6. The SaaS startup Postman has raised 150 million in its Series C funding round. That's nearly 1,000 crore. This has been led by Insight Partners at a valuation of 2 billion. So the company is being valued at 15,000 crore. So this will catapult it into the coveted unicorn club, which basically means a unicorn, for all of you who don't know, is a business that's funded without having an existing revenue or profitability just yet. So it's a conceptual company per se. So it's quite ridiculous the kind of valuations these companies get. Okay, we're now done with Economic Times. Quickly bring you the top 5 headlines from the Times of India. India now number 4 as fresh cases hit a record high. Maharashtra nears 1 lakh cases with 3,607 cases daily. Nagpur to conduct largest plasma therapy trials. US coronavirus cases crossed 2 million on the back of that resurgence. And fuel prices are hiked for the 5th day in a row. So that's for all of us consumers. All right. Chandra is now with us on the phone. Good morning, Chandra. Great to have you with us as always. Walk us through this Postman infusion. What does it really mean? How does the valuation stack up?
Okay, Varun. First of all, to clarify, Postman definitely has revenue. So all unicorns are not companies with zero revenues and profit. It simply means that, a term in a venture capital industry to describe a privately held company with a valuation of $1 billion. Now, the funding for Postman is significant because it underlines the kind of interest that you are seeing in the SaaS or the software as a development space. And Postman is based both in India and the US. In fact, its Indian founders are based in the US. It has received $150 million in funding led by Insight Partners. And as you said, this will value Postman at $2 billion. So it joins the Unicorn Club and the other Indian SaaS players, the B2B players who are in the Unicorn Club include the likes of Freshworks and Juba. So it kind of shows you the interest that is there in this space. And more than 11 million users around the world use Postman to streamline collaboration. And, they basically use it to build APIs. So that's what's really driving Postman. And the founder and CEO is also very positive, saying that developers all over the world are transitioning to an API-first mindset. And Postman's really leading this revolution. So this again shows you how well the software as a service segment is doing, that there is still a lot of demand for the B2B business space, even if B2C has taken a hit in the light of the recent lockdown and COVID-19.
All right, Chandra, thank you so much for joining us this morning. On that note, completely out of time here on the newspaper show. Stay tuned. TT now.